Pip pip, tally ho, Joolz Guides here, in which I wander around London and tell you fascinating facts. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and to share and tell all your friends if you like these videos. So today we're in St James's Park, but we're going to wander around there, around past Westminster Abbey and the Houses of Parliament and everything. St James's Park was actually laid out by King Henry VIII as a kind of deer park. And then James I, he used to keep elephants, crocodiles, camels, and over there, in that street over there called Birdcage Walk, he had a whole aviary full of all these birds. That's why it's called Birdcage Walk. But it was King Charles II, my favourite king, who opened it up to the public. And then he added this canal here, which he used to go swimming in. He used to catch ducks as well. Down at the end, they'd have a little pool where they could catch the ducks and they'd roast them for din-dins.
I've seen a deal of gaiety throughout my noisy life. With all my grand accomplishments, I never could get a wife.
I've got an emergency nut. Always handy to carry an emergency nut for the squirrel. Okay, mate. All right. Okay, careful. No, careful. All right, mate. Bloomin' heck.
Cheeky.
If you're here at the right time, you can see them feeding the pelicans, because back in 1664, the Russian ambassador gave a gift of some pelicans to King Charles II, and ever since they've had pelicans here. They're the descendants of those original ones, I think.
Oh, the CIA have come for you, Julian.
However did they recognise me? Funnily enough, when you're about to join British intelligence, like MI6 or something, this is the bridge you have to walk across in order to be initiated. They kind of meet. So if you see a bloke dressed like this with a pipe and a monocle, we're walking across and saying, do you have a match? I'm sorry, I prefer to use a lighter. Then you know they're probably being initiated into MI6.
Most excelling is the PRFG game.
One of my subscribers kindly sent me a wonderful book with old maps of London and things in it. And in it, it's got a brilliant painting facing this direction. That's facing north. And on the left, you can see Buckingham House, which then became Buckingham Palace later. But on the right-hand side of the map, you can see your Horse Guards and even a bit of Whitehall. But anything north of Piccadilly, you can hardly see any houses. It's all fields. Have you ever read The Three Musketeers, Simon?
Yes, many years.
Really? It's probably my favourite book. And there's actually 5 books. There's Three Musketeers, 20 Years After, Vicomte de Bragelonne, Louise de la Vallière, and it finishes with The Man in the Iron Mask. Now, everyone knows Cardinal Richelieu from the first book, but then in the subsequent books, they've got Cardinal Mazarin. He's replaced. I like him because he's called Jules Mazarin. Now, anyway, this Cardinal Mazarin guy, he fell out with a poet around 1661 called Charles Evremond. And Evremond got exiled and came to London to seek favour from King Charles II. But this put the king in a really awkward position because he really liked this poet, who was really popular, but he wanted to find a way of helping him without upsetting the French. So he said, I know, I'm going to make him governor of Duck Island. And of course, this Charles Evremond, he had no idea what Duck Island was. And it was actually that island over there. So being the governor of it means nothing. And he just carried on thinking, well, that's a pretty cool title. But the French knew clearly what it was, and they said that's fine, he can be governor of Duck Island, no probs. He also gave him a pension of £300 a year, which was quite a lot in those days.
Well, so he just stayed here and became governor of that island and scrounged off the king?
Well, yeah, he did actually get invited to go back to France, but he decided to stay here because Cardinal Mazarin's niece, Hortense Mancini, she came to London in 1670 and set up a salon for love-making, gambling and erudite conversation. And of course, why wouldn't he love hanging out there? Because the king used to hang out there too.
And we're keeping our clothes on.
And in fact, King Charles was very impressed with this new drink called champagne, which this Charles Evremond introduced him to, except in those days, it wasn't really champagne. It was kind of this flat thing because they hadn't perfected this secondary fermentation process which you need to make champagne. Because apparently you couldn't do that in the bottle in France because French glass wasn't strong enough. But the English glass was strong enough. And this English guy called Christopher Merritt at the Royal Society here explained just how you should do it. And so champagne was invented in England. We got there first.
And swimming in champagne. For Champagne Charlie is my name. Champagne Charlie is my name.
In 1837, the Ornithological Society, they donated a load of birds to the park, and I think they also built that little Swiss-type chalet there for the bird keeper to stay in.
Yeah, there's a documentary I saw on YouTube, I think it was from the 70s or early 80s, and yeah, it's about the bird keeper, and you see him grabbing a swan out of the lake, you see him feeding the pelicans and incubating eggs in that little chalet, and it's great, check it out, it's only about 50 minutes long.
Of those old things.
Yeah.
Now, we're not talking about that today, but that's sort of number 10 Downing Street, sort of just over there, and this is Churchill's war rooms, which you can go and visit if you like. I go in there in my London Pass video. You can even see Churchill's pyjamas in there and all sorts of stuff. It's really good in there. Excellent. Worth a visit. And the Foreign Office, or is it the Home Office? I get them all mixed up, but we're not going that way. We're heading this way. This is Birdcage Walk, where the King used to have all his birds in cages. Oh, actually, you see these things? People keep asking me what these are. It's just because of Westminster. It's just a W for Westminster. Westminster, and then this one I think is 2 C's, means City Council.
That's how I write my W's.
Oh really?
Yeah.
You're a bit of a W.
Good for any game at night, my boys. Good for any game at night, my boys. For champagne.
Now this used to be the London Transport Offices. Built in 1929, that above St James Park Station. The thing's nice about it is these Epstein and Gill sculptures around it. Epstein was the guy who did Oscar Wilde's grave and a whole bunch of other things that a lot of people didn't like at the time, but you see these sculptures around here. I think these ones on the lower level are night and day, and the ones on the top level are the north, south, east and west winds blowing or something. But we're going this way, Queen Anne's Gate.
Good for any game at night, my boys, who come and join me on a spree.
This whole area is really beautiful if you walk past at night, because they've got these authentic old gas lamps. Sometimes they malfunction and they come on at the wrong time of day. This one is obviously, I don't think it should be on right now, but they're really beautiful. And if you come at night time and walk through the park, you feel like you're in Oliver Twist or something. These keystones above the windows here, these are made out of a special type of stone. I think it's called coad stone. There was this formula that was created by a family who had a factory down near Waterloo, and they created this process of making this excellent stone which was resilient to the London weather. Anyway, when they died, their formula died with them, and it was only recently that they rediscovered how it was done.
When you say resilient, do you mean, how do you mean by that? Resilient?
Kind of impervious. I think they don't decay or something. They're more weather resistant. You know? Obviously, you've got a million blue plaques down here, and of course, a statue of Queen Anne, which was supposed to be on the Church of St Mary Le Strand. But then she died when they were just about to put it up, and then they said, oh, you know what, let's just put her here instead, which is a bit mean.
Queen Anne, isn't she 1700s?
Yeah, 1702 to 1714.
So wouldn't she have blocked the windows originally?
Yeah, I don't know when they blocked those out, actually.
So what about that plaque?
Usually these are kind of boundary markers representing the edge of the parish. But I don't think there was a parish around here which began with C. I think it's a property marker for Christ Hospital, which is like a old English public school. They must own this house or something, which was also where Roger Moore lived in The Persuaders. Because they're so old, they've got these things outside with like little hoops.
Oh, yes.
Those were for putting lamps in. I suppose they would have burnt torches back in those days. But it's nice to see someone has actually used them here, but they put electric ones in. It would be nicer if they put some, you know...
Hanging baskets, some plants.
Well, yeah, some people do. But I just think it would be nice to have a real flame there. But I expect it's not allowed. There's a great pub there, isn't it? Look at that.
I think I saw that in the Sweeney.
Probably. I've always loved these steps here. Cockpit steps, they're called. There's actually a painting by, or an engraving or something, by Hogarth, It's called the Cockpit. It features lots of characters who were famous at the time. Well, I don't know who they were. They're gambling on cockfights and stuff. But anyway, apparently the Cockpit was right here. So when you look at that picture by Hogarth, you know that that was right here. It ain't here no more, though.
The way I gained my titles by a hobby which I've got of never letting others pay, however long.
You see this house here behind me, number 26. This is where the King's falconer used to live in the 1700s. He was, in fact, the only person who was allowed to drive down the Birdcage Walk. Back in the 1950s, because of the amount of coal that everyone was burning, there was so much soot on all the buildings. But after the Second World War, they decided to scrub up some of these buildings. And actually, famously, they decided to clean 10 Downing Street. And they found that actually the bricks are yellow on 10 Downing Street. But they all looked at it and they thought, wait a minute, that just doesn't look very prime ministerial. It doesn't look cool. They didn't like it, so they decided to paint it black in order to make it look more like the Prime Minister's house. And the same goes for this one. It doesn't actually have black bricks.
It's like a garish pink underneath, isn't it?
Yeah, I think they might be yellow bricks like that, that one there.
Yeah.
Doesn't come off. No.
Whoever drinks at my expense are treated all the same. From dukes and lords to cabmen down, I make them drink champagne for...
This was built in 1911. It's like a multi-purpose Methodist hall, Wesleyan Methodists. But this is where the first United Nations General Assembly was held in 1946. Suffragettes had meetings here in 1914, but most importantly, when England held the World Cup in 1966, this is where they displayed the Jules Rimet trophy, and it's the one where they stole it. But then it was found by a dog called Pickles in a bush in South London.
Pickles, good old Pickles, eh?
Just as well, really, because we haven't won it since, have we? So, but at least we won it for once. And right opposite is Westminster Abbey, or is it? The original abbey was built by King Sebert, who was an Anglo-Saxon king in the year 620. His tomb is still in there, by the way. He's buried. It's the oldest tomb in Westminster Abbey. But anyway, there was then these fishermen who were fishing over in the River Thames, and this bloke called out to them and said, "Oi, mate, can you give me a lift to the other side?" So they took him over, and he said, "Yeah, my name's Peter, and I'm a fisherman as well. And I've come here down from heaven to dedicate this church, which is going to bear my name." So its actual name is the Collegiate Church of St. Peter. Later, in 1050, Edward the Confessor rebuilt it, and back then it was called Westminster Abbey because it was west, it was a minster, which is a church, and it was west of the City of London. But the current church dates from 1245, so it's still pretty ancient. Carry that, mate.
Cheers, Julian. Say a prayer for me, won't you?
This is excellent. They've got the tombs of Edward the Confessor, Queen Elizabeth I, Henry VII, loads of different monarchs. In fact, all the monarchs have been crowned here since William the Conqueror in 1066, apart from Edward V, who died in the Bloody Tower, and Edward VIII, who abdicated. John Dryden, Chaucer, Charles Dickens as well. And this is the coronation chair where all the monarchs have been crowned since 1300. They've even got Britain's oldest door, dating from 1050, if you don't include the one they put in my bathroom, that is. Yeah, it actually, so it remained part of this Benedictine monastery up until 1539. King Henry VIII decided to come along and knock down all the monasteries and everything, but he spared this one because I think he quite liked it. Now, you've heard of robbing Peter to pay Paul. Well, the idea was to use all the riches confiscated from these monasteries to replenish these other churches. But this one, apparently, they got a bit big for their boots and they said, "Oh, can we have a little bit more money, please, for our church?" And then I think it was King Edward VI, he was saying, "No, sorry, I'll tell you what, you're really getting on my nerves now, and so I'm going to take the money from your funds and I'm going to give them to St. Paul's Cathedral over in the city, thereby robbing Peter to pay Paul." As if you cared.
Champagne Charlie is my name. Champagne Charlie is my name. Good for any any game at night, my boy.
There used to be a sanctuary here where basically you're allowed, if you were a criminal, they would let you come and stay here and not be arrested, as long as your crimes weren't against the church or against the king.
Sanctuary, 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 sanctuary.
But then they knocked that all down, and now it's replaced with this building designed by Sir George Gilbert Scott. He must have been the father or grandfather of Joolz Gilbert Scott, the guy who did the telephone boxes. Anyway, he did this lovely building there, which I think has just got loads of offices and stuff in it, and this memorial to kids from Westminster School who died in the Indian and Russian wars of 1854 to 1859. Were you aware of those wars?
Yes, I was. I'm an expert, actually.
Because Westminster School is through there. Had loads of famous people went there, actually. Christopher Wren went there. Andrew Lloyd Webber was famous who went there.
Shane McGowan.
Yes, Shane McGowan did go there. He was expelled, I think, for taking drugs or something. Unfortunately, it's closed. It's called Dean's Yard. But hopefully, by the time you come to London, you should be able to take a lovely walk through there. And it's all very beautiful. Just opposite over here, you see, that's the Middlesex Guildhall, and that is the Supreme Court. If you keep appealing, you go to the Crown Court, the High Court. I think the Supreme Court is the one who has the ultimate say. No more chances. See, what I like about it, that street over there is called Tothill Street. 250 years ago, they had Tothill Prison. The prison was demolished in 1776, but they've salvaged one part of it and they've put it into the wall over here. Look, Sir Walter Raleigh was held there just before he got his head chopped off. But this gateway here would have had many prisoners come through it, including Sir Walter Raleigh. Here are several sorts of work for the poor of this parish, St Margaret's, Westminster, as also the county according to law, and for such as will beg and live idle in this city and liberty. Anno 1655. I'm touching history. Maybe Sir Walter Raleigh touched it as he went through. Norman Stanley Fletcher, you have been found guilty of eating too many potatoes. This is St Margaret's Church, and I know you're thinking, oh, not another church. I mean, it reminds me of when I used to go to Rome. My cousins used to show me around, and there would just be, and this church is this, and this church that. It was just so many churches. Originally, Edward the Confessor had one built here in 1064, but this one dates from the 16th century, so it's still pretty old. Yes. And again, annoyingly, we can't get in there. Shall I climb over? No. But normally you can go in here, and that window there, I think it's the one on the other side actually, it's the east window, which we can't go and look at annoyingly, so I'll have to show you a photo, was donated by the parents of Catherine of Aragon. It was given as a present to King Henry VII because Henry VII's son, Henry VIII, was marrying Catherine of Aragon. It's 500 years old, that window. But anyway, they're depicted on this window, which was donated by Ferdinand and Isabella of Spain. Winston Churchill was married in here, and Samuel Pepys as well. Unfortunately, everything is closed, everything's covered in scaffolding, so I'm going to be cutting to a lot of footage that I took before they closed it all off. The House of Parliament, officially it's the Palace of Westminster. It is actually a royal palace. Edward the Confessor moved the royal court here in 1050, and it stayed there until a fire in 1500, causing them to move it to Whitehall Palace, which incidentally also burnt down in 1698. So they've got a lot of fires taking place. But they rebuilt Westminster, and yes, you guessed it, there was another fire in 1834 when they rebuilt it, which is the one that you can see now.
Yeah, so don't play with matches, kids.
You see over there, there's like a taxi light. When a member of Parliament wants to take a taxi, the lamp will light up and a taxi driver will come past here and he'll make himself available to them. But this part here survived the fires, all the various fires, And that's what that's Westminster Hall, which was built in 1097. And that is where British democracy was born. The first true English Parliament with elected representatives took place in Westminster Hall in 1265. It was a fella called Simon de Montfort.
Oh, the beggar.
No, that's Henry de Montfort. No, Simon was like this rebel leader who didn't like all the power that the king had. But his son was the blind beggar of Bethnal Green, who you know from my Bethnal Green video. A Tudor song claims that his son, Henry de Montfort, went blind at the Battle of Evesham and went on to go begging with a white dog. But in reality, he died at the Battle of Evesham with his father. For a great many years, this was a law court. Right up until the 19th century, I think, there was a lot of legal cases were heard here. Some very high-profile ones, I might add. William Wallace, you know, as in Braveheart, Mel Gibson, he was sentenced in there. And King Charles I, who had his head chopped off, Guy Fawkes, Anne Boleyn, Sir Thomas More. You don't stand much of a chance if you're facing trial in there. I mean, let's face it. Although that said, when the Pedlars Union went in there with myself and the other members of our fraternity, we actually did really well. We won our case. I was in the House of Commons. I'm in Hansard. Yeah, we won our case. Oh, look, and there's Oliver Cromwell, who we talked about in my Christmas video. Look, he's standing there and he's looking straight across at his nemesis, King Charles I, whose head he had chopped off. Now, Cromwell died in 1658 and was buried in Westminster Abbey. But when King Charles II came back to the throne, they exhumed his body and they hanged it in chains at Tyburn Gallows, and they chopped off his head and stuck it on the top of Westminster Hall there. And it stayed there for about 20 years. Eventually, I think the wind just blew it down, and they went and buried it somewhere in Cambridge at his old college. You can see photos of it online. It's really grim. I love these old bits. Look, this bit is still quite preserved from before the fire. There was this big fire in 1834 which just destroyed the old Palace of Westminster. This survived it. This is the Jewel Tower. King Edward III kept his jewels here. Normally, when it's open, you can go and visit. This used to have fish and stuff. This is like a little moat down here. I used to have nice fishies and stuff. So I'm no expert on this area, but I can't walk past here without mentioning Houses of Parliament. I mean, that bit over there, is it Old Palace Yard? I think that's the bit where they used to do the executions. Wow. So Sir Walter Raleigh had his head chopped off right there. Yeah, it's a pity, it's hard to tell with all the scaffolding. You can't really tell with all the scaffolding. Amazing. This tower here is called Victoria Tower. Every law that has ever been passed in England is written on vellum parchment and is stored inside that tower. Can you believe it? Amazing.
Not anymore.
What, really?
Not anymore. That's what I heard.
Oh no.
As of last year or something, they're not using vellum.
What?
Check it. I might be wrong.
But they've gone online.
I might be wrong.
You like a bit of a Henry Moore, don't you, Simon? It's
Yeah, I like the Henry Moore, yes. I know you do not. But...
Not a massive fan myself. I mean, what's this supposed to be? Two edges?
Can't you tell?
I prefer this one on the other side. Emmeline Pankhurst, famous suffragette. It's a wonderful view inside these gardens here, but my favourite thing about it is this Rodin sculpture here. It's called the Burghers of Calais. A burgher is like an important citizen. So there was this siege in Calais in 1347 during the 100 Years' War, and in order to spare the lives of the inhabitants of Calais, King Edward III said, I'll tell you what, why don't you send out 6 of your most important citizens with nooses around their necks and keys to the city, and then I'll spare the other inhabitants, but I'm going to kill this lot. And so these lot were sent out looking pretty glum, as you can see, but then his wife managed to talk him out of it. They really do look pretty glum, don't they? Look very unhappy. I'm not surprised, really.
From coffee and from supper rooms, from Poplar to Pall Mall, the girls on seeing me exclaim, oh, what a champagne swell.
Look, that's a part of the old original wall of the Benedictine monastery. That's nice, isn't it? So we're heading this way.
And causing so much to be drunk, they'd never make champagne for...
Here at the end of Lord North Street in Smith Square is the Church of St John the Evangelist, built in 1728. And they call it Queen Anne's footstool because they say that she was asked how she wanted the church to be built, and apparently she just kicked over her footstool and it landed with the legs up in the air, and she said, I'll just make it look like that. So they built it with these 4 tall things. But actually I think those 4 towers support the walls, because this is all built on all really marshy sort of riverbank, really. The whole area that Westminster Abbey and everything is built on was originally a little island. They called it Thorney Island. So this area isn't all that solid. But I did recently have someone write to me about, you know, these pineapples that I said in the last video. I said, oh, these are the pineapples on top of the church. And if you want to know all about them, you can watch my last video. But look, here, they've also got the pineapples on top of the church. And it says here, so someone was saying, no, they're not pineapples, they're pine cones, right? Which I agree, pine cones do also actually signify certain things. But according to this sign outside here, you can see the 4 towers or legs of the stool adorned with pineapples. It said so. That's good enough for me. In Our Mutual Friend, Charles Dickens describes this church as resembling some petrified monster, frightful and gigantic on its back with its legs in the air. But as you walk around this square, you can see these beautiful examples of more 18th century houses. And moreover, if you want to look characterful, you can learn to ride a penny farthing here, because this is where he brings you when you come to do the penny farthing. See my other video all about learning to ride a penny farthing. They'll bring you down here and you'll go in circles around here as you learn to ride it.
Champagne Charlie is my name. Good for any game at night, my boy.
We have to be a bit careful we don't film through someone's window here because we feel a bit bad. But on the walls down here, you can still see evidence, like over here you see, evidence of where there's a sign for the bomb shelters in the Second World War. Look, it says public shelters under pavements in this street. Look, there's another one there, look. Public shelters in vaults under pavements. You see it? That's excellent. Come down Cowley Street, just because it's a beautiful street, like with these lovely old houses. Look at this. Tremendous. This is where Lord Reith used to live, the guy who founded the BBC. Just above his door, they've got a little fire insurance plaque, look. However, I can report to you that this isn't actually an authentic, well, an original position for a fire insurance plaque, because I was talking to the person who lives there and they said that they bought it in a sale and then they put it there above the door. I do like it though, it's great. And look, points for the stone street sign there, 1722. But further down here along this road, which looks like, makes you feel like you're in an Agatha Christie film, especially if you're dressed like this. I feel like I'm Captain Hastings dressed like this. He's got an outfit like this. But this is where Lawrence of Arabia lived. Here, look. He used to live on the top floor before he died in a motorcycle accident in 1935. And that's the way into the Dean's Yard, which brings you out to the front of Westminster Abbey, but unfortunately it's closed. Not fair. Even Google Street View can go in there, but I can't because it's all closed because of the lockdown. But anyway, that's a beautiful, lovely way to end your walk.
Any game at night, my boys. Good for any game at night, my boys. For champagne.
Cheers, cheers, Simon. Cheers with the coffee, if that's acceptable. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and to hit the notification bell if you want to be notified every time that I upload a new video. Hit the thumbs up. Follow me on my Instagram at Joolz Guides Official.
We should be drinking champagne, you great Charlie.
Yeah, I know, it's true. People say I drink too much at the end of my videos. Everything's closed, so we had to go for coffee this time. If you like the song, it's actually Tom Caroline, and you can buy his music on his website, carolinescockneysingalong.co.uk, although I'm not sure if this one's available on there. Anyway, we'll see you next time. Cheers.
Good for any game at night, my boys. Oh, come and join me on a spree.